You're listening to a Times Higher Education podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Campus Podcast with me, Miranda Prin.
And me, Laura Duckett.
Hi Laura, this is your first time on the podcast, so perhaps you can tell our listeners a bit about yourself and your role on campus.
Yeah, so I joined campus last September as a content curator, which involves commissioning and editing resources and putting together collections on topics relevant to higher education. And it also means that I work very closely with our Campus Plus partner institutions to help them showcase their expertise across the site.
And just for those of you who may be less familiar with campus, a brief explainer. We are Times Higher Education's platform where academics and university staff all over the world can share advice and insight based on their work, their expertise and their experience on how best to deliver different elements of higher education. So that could be relating to teaching, to research, to EDI, or work towards the sustainable development goals, really any aspect of higher education. Now, on to this week's topic. We are focusing on various elements of digital transformation in higher education. And we're going to hear how two universities are embracing digital tools to enhance their teaching, student experience, and staff and institutional digital capacity. So, Laura, can you explain how this episode came about?
So I was lucky enough to attend Times Higher Education's Digital Universities event in Bali in July, where there were some pretty sci-fi worthy themes being discussed, like degrees being taught and assessed entirely by AI avatars, and also the potential to use mind reading technology to see if students are using Gen AI to write their assessments. Aside from that, I heard about some really innovative work going across the sector, and it struck me as the perfect opportunity to sit down with some speakers from the event and to find out a bit more about what their universities are doing in the digital space.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to hear how specific individuals and institutions are working with these tools, because the term digital transformation is bandied around a lot, and it's such a vast topic that when talked about in general terms, it's almost so broad as to be kind of meaningless, or certainly it's very difficult to sort of draw practical applications. So I think it's really helpful to zoom in on specific aspects of university work and find out exactly how people are putting this into practice.
Yes, I agree. And that was my aim for these two interviews. The first person I spoke to was Chen, who's the Director of Educational Development at the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. And we talked about integrating Gen AI into teaching and assessment. And she gave me some really good examples of how it's working in practice, which was quite fascinating.
Fantastic. Let's hear from Julia.
So thank you for joining me today, Julia. Can you start by telling me a bit about yourself and your role and what brings you here to Digital Universities Asia?
Sure. So I am the director of the Educational Development Center at the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. And our center has 5 main areas of work. One, we support the university in learning and teaching related policies and guidelines. Right? And for example, in drafting strategic plans, in looking at Gen AI guidelines and what we should do about it, for example. And we also look at learning and teaching projects. We do training, staff development training, and we also try to do something that is across the university, so in the higher education sector in Hong Kong, for example. Mm-hmm. So I'm here at Digital Universities Asia. I received that invitation to come and talk about AI and academic integrity.
Well, great to have you. I know that you're working on some government-funded multi-university projects on Gen AI best practices. Sounds fascinating. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Like in Hong Kong, there are 8 government-funded universities. And the government very kindly set up a project fund last year. in view of the rise of Gen AI, and they encourage inter-institution collaborative activities. So what I did was I went to my counterpart in the other 7 government-funded universities, and I asked them, I said, would you like to join me on a project where we can look at best practices from the 8 universities, and we can analyze why they are good practices, and then showcase them so that other institutions in Hong Kong and institutions around the world can also look at those good practices and learn from them. We can learn from each other and all that. So that's why I'm leading that 8 university project. And I'm very glad because according to the government, this is the only project that involves all 8 universities. Yeah, so that's wonderful. AI or technology in education is a challenge that we all face. Yeah, so that's a wonderful opportunity. We're also thinking of actually starting a new community of practice that involves all the 8 universities as founding members of the community of practice. And with that COP, we can reach out to non-government funded universities as well as other higher education institutes, both locally and around the world. In fact, a few weeks ago, we organized a webinar where we had one teacher from each of the 8 universities who were sharing on how they have been incorporating Gen AI in their learning, teaching, and assessment. And we attracted over 1,300 registrants from 34 countries.
It's clear there's high demand for this kind of content.
Yeah. So I think that's worth doing.
Yeah. It's really fascinating to hear about all these initiatives. There's a lot going on in the space right now. I know that one of your areas of interest is assessment. Can you tell me a bit about some of the ways that you're embracing generative AI and rethinking assessment redesign?
Definitely. So my university, in fact my center, is the first one in the whole of Hong Kong to offer a staff development workshop on what Gen AI is and how we should face that. And we did that in mid-February last year. Right? And right from the very start, we said this is something to stay, it won't go away.
Yeah.
So let's embrace it. Instead of resisting it, although at that time, February last year, 2023, we didn't quite know what it was yet, right? And how it would develop. But we said, let's take an open and forward-looking stance.
Sure.
And from then, we had been asking students to tell us how they have been using Gen AI tools. And we have been discussing how we should be using Gen AI in learning, teaching, and assessment. And last year, in June, I decided to write, when I was invited to write an article for the campus, I decided to write it on assessment. At that time, actually, many people were still talking about, what are we going to do with it? What is it? But I was looking forward, and I said, okay, in terms of learning, teaching, and assessment, the one with the highest stake, of course, is assessment. So that must be the aspect that we must look at first. Right? So I said, okay, at that time I said, okay, there are a few ways we can do it. We must redesign our assessment. We cannot continue to give like essays when students can completely plagiarize, right? And that doesn't help because assessment should be an evaluation of the extent of learning our students have achieved. So if we want students to learn, we need to think of ways to assess them so that they can show us how much they have understood and how much they have learned. Right? So we have been talking about assessment redesign in our university since last summer. Right? So there are a number of things that we have done. We have been including multimodality in many of our assessments, not just textual. So students do not just submit an essay. They can submit something in written form as part of their assessment. But they also submit something multimodal. Okay. So for example, they can go on location, they can shoot themselves on location, explaining a concept, right? And instead of just referencing literature, which Gen AI can do a bit, they have to reference other things, like reference what the teacher said in class or a particular discussion that went on in class.
Yeah, so a more personalized approach.
Yeah, and how that discussion informed their understanding of etc. And then we also said that Gen AI can actually write the script for you for oral presentations, right? So focus less on the oral presentation part and focus more on the Q&A, the mini viva part. Do more of these mini vivas and get students to actually show you how much they appreciate what they have done, how much they have learned from the process, how much they have learned from Gen AI can be, right? And from each other and from their desk research or from their empirical research, whatever. Yeah. And then we have also been, another good thing is we have been encouraging student-staff partnership. Because students very often know so much more about new technology than staff. So staff know about their content, the discipline content. Students know about the Gen AI part, right? And they can work together and co-design assessments. And that's fun and that's good. Involving students, engaging students is always a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of leads to higher levels of engagement, doesn't it, in general? I actually have a question about how students have reacted to this change. I mean, it must have been quite a shock for those who were traditionally used to one way of assessment.
Of course.
Kind of transition to this quite quickly.
Yes, definitely. I think they understand though.
Yeah.
They know why our university have been changing our assessment practices. Because they know that if we just kept to essays, they could all plagiarize, right?
Yeah.
So they knew why. Of course, it's a shock, but I guess next year will be less of a shock, hopefully, right? As more and more teachers move towards embracing AI in assessment. And we try to put it in our lessons as well. You know, so students have a feel of how they can use Gen AI in the lessons already. And then they can learn how they can use it for their own assessment as well.
Sure. And in what ways do you teach them how to use AI in the lessons? Things like prompt writing and...
Yeah, prompt writing. Or now, for example, some of the design faculty in our university have been using Midjourney. So they tell the students how to use Midjourney.
Okay. For those of us who don't know what Midjourney is.
It's more visual-based Gen AI tool rather than text-based. Right? So there are different tools, and then teachers in different disciplines can decide and choose which one fits their context the most. So that's interesting. And we are trying to, since I wrote the article from campus, what we have realized is that we should be doing more process assessment, not just like one-off and then submit, right? But with Gen AI there, you can actually do multiple stage assessments. Okay, so for example, one of the stages can be get Gen AI to do something, prompt Gen AI, okay, and then critique what Gen AI comes back with, so that we can encourage more higher level thinking. And then they include that, and then they say what should be the next step for themselves. So yeah, students are hopefully getting used to more variety, I would say, in assessment, rather than just essay.
Yeah, it makes it more interesting, doesn't it? It sounds like it sounds like a much more engaging way of doing things.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and more, we are trying to do more assessments that are more location or context based. I can give you an example. For example, one of the examples is in our university, we have a building real estate department. And one of the new assignments that the teacher ingeniously designed is that part of our campus is in development stage. Okay, and they asked the students to design a new building on that new campus. So that's something that sounds very real, sounds very authentic, right? And then part of that assessment is to get Gen AI to do a design, or do a couple of designs. And then you critique each design, right? And say, why would this design not fit the local context? Okay? And why would that design be better, for example? But in what ways would you still want to improve on any of the designs that Gen AI give you? Then they have to use the knowledge they learned in class, and they have to really think about it, and it's fun. They're doing something that can be so authentic and really location and context oriented as well.
Yeah, that sounds great. It's this idea of using AI to enhance your practice rather than kind of being scared of potentially competing against AI. You have to think about, how we can use AI to improve the way that we work.
Absolutely, yeah. Another example could be, we have a professor who teaches plumbing. And instead of writing assignments in an essay form, he asked students to write a bit and then apply whatever they have learned anywhere, from textbook, from Gen AI, from anywhere, to discuss the plumbing in their own flat. And then take a video of themselves, in the flat, and pointing here and pointing there and talking about You know, that's absolutely wonderful because it's highly engaging, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right? Gen AI can't do the whole thing, right? Gen AI can do part of that, but then students have to build on that, critique that, add their own ideas, and really show that they have understood what they're supposed to learn in that course.
It sounds like there's just so many interesting ideas flying around, and yeah, I'm sure your students are appreciating these innovative techniques.
Yeah, kudos to our teachers, really. Some of them are so creative.
How have you handled department-wide change? I know it must be, sending shockwaves through the institution. You've talked about how your students have been very adaptable and kind of almost seen this coming. So how has your department reacted as a whole?
Yeah. So we try to preempt a number of things. Okay. First of all, my center, as a central administrative unit, we reach out to all the departments and all the faculties and schools in our university. We meet with each of the faculty, like a school, right, one by one. And in our meetings, we talk about what Gen AI is. We try to let them know that this is not something that we need to be terribly afraid of. It's not that we don't need to be worried about. There are things that we need to be concerned about, but we need to face them like that, positively as we can. We offer a lot of open to all workshops that anybody from the university can join. And we also offer departmental-based consultation. Right? Because the open to all workshops have to be generic because anybody can come. Right? But for example, our School of Nursing asked for a departmental consultation so that we can talk to them about how to redesign learning, teaching, and assessment in their context for nursing students. Yeah. So that's how we have been preparing the departments and faculties. It's tough for them. Many of them don't want to, admit that this really is coming.
Yeah.
Right? We are a research-heavy university, so that makes it difficult as well. So many of our professors, associate professors, they would rather spend time doing research and publishing, right? But what we tell them is, look, spend some time now, redesign your assessment, and be in less pain later on. Yeah. We say if you continue and just give an essay type of assignment now, then when you mark and when you talk to students about whether they have plagiarized or not, that will be very painful for you, right? And it would take up a lot of your time that you wouldn't want to spend on this. And it's a no-win situation for you because the students can always say, for example, that they haven't plagiarized or they didn't know about A and B, and so you can't penalize them. No.
And I know that Hong Kong Polytechnic University, that it's obvious that you're doing a lot around in this space, and it's not necessarily the case in other institutions. I wonder if you could give some advice on how to approach assessment redesign for those who are in the initial stages.
I think there can be two approaches for those who are in the initial stages of change. One is to think about how you can redesign your assessments so that Gen AI doesn't play a part in it at all. So you sort of go around the problem, so to speak, in quotation marks. So, for example, you ask students to do something completely in location, for example. Let's say you talk about branding, and you take students to a particular location in your city, and then you ask them on location to talk about some of the brands, right? Then they have to do it right there and then. Okay, there's no Gen AI, so you sort of, avoid the Gen AI problem like that. And that is still authentic. Okay? My suggestion would be whatever the way you do it, try to stay as authentic as possible. Because we are preparing students for the future, for the workforce. And we need to do authentic things to prepare them for that authentic workplace. So that's one aspect. If we don't know how to incorporate Gen AI in the assessment, then think of ways in which we can do away with Gen AI. But not in the way that you lock students up in a room and you give them pen and paper and you ask them to do it without Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Okay. So we still should try to be as authentic as possible. And then another way would be after that, try to think of how you can actually use Gen AI in the assessment. Like what I was saying just now, you can design, instead of a one-off assignment, you design like 3 parts to the assignment. And one part, you actually get students to use Gen AI. So it's legit to use Gen AI. And then you put that in your assessment rubric. How well they have used it can be part of the score. How well they have critiqued whatever comes out of Gen AI can be a score. Right? And that's how you can build it in. Instead of saying, you can't use it, if you use it, I'll penalize you. Right? No. Get them to legitimately use it.
Just to follow up on that point, what would you say are some of the indicators that students are using it correctly?
My colleagues and I in our center, we have been collecting some sample assessments from the different departments. We enjoy looking at how students have actually been reflecting on what they got out of Gen AI. You know, that reflection is interesting because that reflection shows, okay, so they saw this, do they like it or not? Why did they like it? Why do they not like it, right? And how would they want to improve on that for their assessment purposes, for their learning purposes? Then you see that logic and that flow of thought. Yeah. So that's why I keep saying process is so important, isn't it, right now? And in real world, we always go through a process too. So this is authentic as well. And then when you look at the process, you know which students is really thinking about it and which students are just trying to do the minimum and try to, you know, pass the course without having to spend too much time on it.
Is that because they just don't provide much detail about much critique?
Yeah. Or you see that the reflection is shallow, very short or very brief, or not much content. They can write a lot, but it's just repetitive, for example.
Fluff.
Yes, exactly. In Hong Kong, we have a term for that, for fluff. We call it blow water.
Where does that originate from?
I'm not quite sure, but there is that term. We call it blow water. It's so interesting. but that's it. That means nothing substantial. It's right. A lot of water, but just...
It's a good analogy. I'm interested in finding out a bit more about other ways that you're leveraging technology for advancing teaching and learning. It's not all about AI, is it?
No. For example, we do a lot of learning analytics at our center. In fact, we are leading the universities in Hong Kong in that aspect. We have built an in-house learning analytics platform. And on that platform, we have at least 3 different types of information. We have information for the frontline teacher on how each student in his or her class is using, for example, digital resources, like using the learning management system. Rewatching videos on the learning management system, for example, okay, or doing exercises that the teacher has set up on the learning management system. So that's one thing for the frontline teachers. And then we've also developed something that we call Program Learning Assessment Report, and that's at the program level. Then the program leader can go in, and we've made visualizations of all the courses, so they can see how much engagement each course has got from students, or for example, the grade spread that they have got so far after the first assignment, for example. And then the work of a program leader is tough because there can be, in a 4-year university program, there can be so many courses in a program. So it's very difficult for a program leader to know exactly how each course is doing or which course needs attention. But by providing them with visualizations, it's much easier for them to at a glance see where the outliers are. Right? It doesn't mean that the outliers are necessarily problematic, but then they see where the outliers are, then they can go and address and find out if there's anything that the program leader needs to do. So that's the second layer. The first layer, as I said, is for frontline teachers. The second layer for program leaders. And we have a layer for institution. Okay, senior management can look at that. Department heads can look at that. And that has, we have student surveys and we report like students' learning experience, students' learning gains. Right? So they can look at that and they use that every year when they do their QA, their quality assurance, and when they think about how to do quality enhancement for the following year, they can state what they found out from our platform, what information they got that prompted them to take what action to hopefully make things better in the following year. Right? So that's something that we have been doing, technology, but not just Gen AI, as you said.
There's so much power in data, isn't there? And it's your point about the fact that, you know, the visualization of data makes it so much easier to pinpoint, you know, a friction point.
Yes, and hopefully those friction points, or what we call pain points, can become gain points.
Yeah.
Right? That's what we want them to be able to.
I read your article on redesign, and, you know, a year's passed. Is there anything that you would change now, looking back?
So I didn't mention staged assessment in that article that I wrote a year ago. But since then, we have realized that we really need to do more staged assessment so that we can incorporate AI more in the process, right? But what we are also trying to do is, if possible, but that's going to be very difficult, is to hopefully, because staged assessment or process assessment takes more time. So we need to take things out of the curriculum or reduce the number of assessments to make space for this kind of process assessment. So one thing that we are asking our teachers to seriously think about is, are they over-assessing? That's number one. Okay, how many assessments do they have right now? Are they over-assessing? Okay, can they, when they redesign assessments, can they think about not just one assessment on its own, but the whole assessment picture for that course? Second thing that we're asking them to think about, asking faculty to think about, is whether they can declutter their curriculum. With Gen AI, can some of the readings, can some of the more basic learning take place outside of the lectures and classroom, so that they can declutter the curriculum a bit for students to be able to go more in depth into each of the topic.
It's that higher order thinking, that skill, that the advent of AI is kind of highlighting the need for students to develop this higher level of thinking.
Yeah, and really being able to communicate what they understand to their peers, to their teachers, to whoever, to their future employers. Right? Yeah, and Gen AI by itself, I mean, when students enter a prompt in Gen AI and they get whatever output that is, there is a tendency for that output to be more generic. We have heard a lot of stories about misinformation that we get from Gen AI. Sometimes it's not misinformation, sometimes it's a lack of details, or what we get from Gen AI is only partial. Okay, Gen AI tells us this part, but there's actually much more, right? And then whatever Gen AI comes back may be more suitable at a lower level, maybe year 1, yes, but year 2, year 3, year 4, or master's level, you need to go in much more depth than whatever Gen AI comes back with. Right? So we want to go from generic to specific. So that's something I think would be a direction in higher education.
Really, really interesting to speak to you, Julia.
Thank you
so much.
I love Julia's very positive and proactive approach to bringing generative AI into their teaching and assessment practices, because it's something so many people are understandably quite terrified of. And this just provides a really great example of best practice in how a university can take steps to support staff in embracing this new tech that leaves a lot of people feeling quite panicked and not knowing quite how to progress. And, you know, in the end, she is right, because it's a case of if you can't beat it, join it. Arguably, that applies to most digital tech. You know, it is imperative that universities stay abreast of this stuff, because if they don't, they really do risk being left behind.
And showing adaptability is key, really. Another institution that's taking a progressive approach to the role of technology in higher education is the University of Exeter, where my second interviewee, Helen Cocks, leads the digital strategy. in her interview, we spoke about 3 key problems her team aims to tackle, about how she's working with industry professionals in a range of different fields. And she also outlines tips for getting everyone on board with institution-wide change.
Hi Helen, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast today to speak about what you and your team are up to at the University of Exeter. Before we begin, I wondered if you can tell our listeners a bit about yourself and your work.
Yes, so pleasure for me to be here as well. Thank you very much for inviting me. So I'm Helen Cocks and I'm the Head of Digital Strategy and Engagement at the University of Exeter. I've been with the university for almost 4 years now. I joined in 2020 with a background in change management, transformation and customer experience. And I have thoroughly enjoyed joining the newly formed digital team. I started out as a business manager, developing the strategy with some user research, co-creation, and then building our in-house team. And we've been part of THE's global digital network this year. So we've been really trying to learn as much as we can from other universities and connect with universities across the world, really wanting to explore how we can harness the enormous, it's getting more enormous every day, potential of the digital revolution and help lead the transformation of the higher education sector, particularly when we in the UK speak so much about being behind other sectors.
I came to your session yesterday and something that struck me was when you spoke about your collaboration with industry partners. Can you speak a little bit about that and give us a little bit of a lowdown about what was discussed in that session?
Yeah, so I like to say our session focused on how we've been using our network to support our transformation. So we all know that our student expectations for digital experiences are set outside the sector years before they arrive at university. And we really want to make sure that we are looking and learning lessons from industries who are more ahead with their digital transformation, digital experiences, digital innovations. So we've created a digital advisory network where we've reached out to people that we know in our professional networks, people in our alumni as well, who are working in industry with digital experience, many years of digital strategy, digital transformation behind them. And at a time when we launched the digital team, a new team in the university, we had just 12 people when we started, and we were trying to think about what we needed to do. Often budgets can be limited as well, and the private sector can afford to pay so much more for some of the really bespoke roles, whether that might be engineers or in coding, software development. And yeah, our digital advisory network has helped us as sort of a community of like-minded individuals with lots of experience who volunteer their time to provide advice, guidance, mentoring to our team. Yeah, we celebrated just last week actually with 5 of our most engaged members who'd provided over 60 hours of support between them.
Wow. When you talk about these industries that are far ahead of higher education, which ones do you specifically mean?
So, for example, banking, retail, telecoms, lots of different organisations who are really making the most of the power of the internet, who've often been created in the time of the internet. Whereas if you think about universities, ages old. The University of Exeter is over 150 years old, so it's built on very much legacy, developed over time. Whereas the institutions and the organisations that we're looking for are innovating in today's times. Travel industry, as well. Lots of different things, companies, organisations, ways, social media that our students are all used to using. And we want to be able to provide and meet those sort of digital experience expectations within our university as well.
Can you talk to me a little bit more about your digital transformation strategy and how that particular element of working with industry partners feeds into it?
Yeah, so our digital strategy is being set up as an enabler for the overall University Strategy 2030, where we're committed to investing in digital technology, digital ways of working and digital skills not only for our students but also our staff, so that we can strengthen our education, research and impact. And our digital strategy particularly sets out to become the most accessible and connected university destination for any user. So we're really focusing on solving 3 key problems that came out of the user research. So before we wrote the strategy, we spent a lot of time with our staff and students, key stakeholders, really understanding the context. And the 3 key problems that we're focusing on are making the experience the best and most accessible, as I said, helping people to get things done, so more efficient practice, and delivering value as quickly as possible, both to our users, our students, whether it be their educational outcomes or wider university life experience, and also value back to the university. So we're delivering the strategy in a user-led, data-led way. Our first product launched was in direct response to the top pain points that students fed back, and how we've been working with our digital advisory network so far has been, sharing the kinds of things that we're looking at, the problems that we're trying to solve, and asking for, advice, commentary, input, and support, particularly with implementing and embedding new roles into the institution. So we've got product owners, Scrum Masters, design team, content designers, user researchers, and these are really new roles in our institution and in a lot of institutions that I've spoken to. But as I've said, in other industries, they're ages old already. So helping people understand what those roles mean, and helping our team who are new to higher education, delivering those roles, understand the roles in more detail, help embed the skills and practices that are required.
I just wanted to pick up on the pain points that you mentioned. What were the main pain points that students identified when you carried out that research?
So we had students really wanting to understand how to find study space on campus. That was the first one. So we've provided a feature within our new app that helps them locate study spaces across our different campuses. They wanted to see the timetable, their whole day in one place, rather than have to log into different systems to access, their course timetable, their sports and societies, their meetings with tutors, etc. So now we have their whole timetable in one space. And communication about events that were happening. So we've got a Discover feature, which lets them see the different kinds of things that are happening across campus, that they can filter based on the campus that they're actually on.
We'll talk a little bit more about the app, but I wanted to pick up on your team and the fact that you started with just 12 members. How has it grown? What's the structure looking like now, and how is that feeding into the strategy?
So we have developed an in-house team of around 50 staff now. We're working in agile ways with fortnightly sprints and squads, and we have set the team up into chapters. So a design chapter, product chapter, engineering chapter, and we've got a BI team and digital operations as well. So the design team comprises user experience researchers, content designers, and they're really employing those user-centered design principles to help us understand more about what our students need and our staff, to ideate, prototype and test. So really putting our users at the heart of everything we do. And we offer opportunities for students to get involved at many different stages. So right at the beginning with user research workshops, and then during testing time we have students who come along and test things that we're creating along the way, help give us feedback about what's working, what looks good, and then we continuously iterate, like I said, with the fortnightly sprints. So it's been an exciting time growing and really trying to embed the practices.
What are some of the challenges that you've faced as a team when it comes to resistance to change?
Any change is difficult and takes time. So challenges we faced in the first year, particularly after launching the digital strategy, we found access to data one of our biggest challenges. So data held in legacy systems, many sort of multiples of systems and formats, not integrated or joined up in many cases, and also requiring data protection impact assessments. That meant we needed to know what data we had, in which system, and who has access before we can even start thinking about what we're going to do or would like to do. So, we've talked already about things being designed, like these legacy systems or legacy data sets designed long before the technological possibilities that we have available to us today. So obviously the university data needs to be protected. We need to make sure that we're compliant with regulations, and we also need to make sure that the right technical access is possible, because if it's not, that can stall any developments being made. So that was one of our biggest challenges. Another one has been recruiting digital talent. I mentioned before the private sector pay in comparison to some of the availability that we've got within our own budget, so challenging times around that. But we've worked a lot with our HR department to be able to look at our recruitment campaigns, to be able to really do the research into these new roles for the sector, like product owners, for example, and make sure that we're offering, appropriate remuneration and rewards. And on the capacity front, we've had some really successful outcomes with our student internship programs. So, for example, our digital hub, which is a face-to-face, in-person and online hub where staff and students can go for help and support accessing the digital tools that we have at Exeter, is mainly staffed by student interns. And we also have student interns working with us in communication and engagement roles and helping us share our digital transformation story and share our digital products and services across the student cohort. And that works amazingly well. Benefits for us and benefits for the students who are learning essential skills for their careers as they move on from university as well. Throughout, we really have taken a user-led and data-led approach. And that doesn't just mean that resistance to change won't happen, but it does make it easier for people to really understand the why. Something we talk about at the university a lot as well is practicing what we teach. So as academic institutions, we have academic colleagues who are teaching students or providing exec education modules, all related to digital transformation, innovation, computer science, change management, so much. And we can learn from that internally, support our own practices as well as teach people to go and do those things in their own institutions. So yeah, I think that would be sort of where my advice would be to take that approach of really thinking about how your data and your user research can really feed into making it super obvious why there's a change that needs to happen.
Yeah, and I guess seeing the reaction and seeing how those changes are creating a better experience for students is something that probably makes it other staff members much more amenable to making this transition. I want to move on now to talking about upskilling students and staff when it comes to digital skills. I've read that the University of Exeter is launching a digital skills initiative. Mm-hmm. I can imagine that upskilling an entire student body is no easy feat. What are some of the strategies that you've employed and what's been successful so far?
It's this fascinating space, this, isn't it? Because a lot of people are talking about digital upskilling, so definitely one of the things we've done is try and define what do we mean by digital skills. And one of the first sort of strategies we employed, especially as we were a new team, to the university, was making sure that we shared the kinds of skills and practices that we were using, our ways of working. So we launched an upskilling program initially where our chapter leads hosted upskill sessions, so introducing the fundamentals of their capability. For example, engineering explaining cloud technologies and product team sharing fundamentals of product management. And we also ran agile training courses at that time to just maybe break down some of the barriers or bust any myths to people thinking that agile was, a difficult way of working, or that it meant something that it didn't really mean. And by doing that, which was a really quick turnaround, just hosting some online live upskilling sessions, we reached 1,000 people. And as a result of the things we learned doing that as a quick start, we then hired 2 digital skills leads to focus on scaling what we were doing. And they've developed a digital skills self-assessment tool, or are developing still, a digital skills self-assessment tool really based in some of the learnings from the GISC Building Digital Capabilities framework, which is a great resource and identifies, so our tool identifies what a digital capability is. The individual goes through the self-assessment and sort of sees the output of their own capabilities, and then the tool suggests specific learning resources that they could access to try and improve.
So what kind of things is it assessing?
So we're really focusing on digital in all different senses of the word, whether it might be, being safe online, whether it might be accessing tools that are useful in your education or even everyday life. Digital literacy, for example. And then using a lot of the tools that the institution has already developed. So like I said before, a lot of academic expertise and huge numbers of resources that were brought in, especially from the pandemic, when people were having to access new digital tools from home, whether that be Zoom, whether it be, survey tools, whether it be collaboration tools. So bringing those various resources from departments that have already been developing guidance, support, and then putting them in one place so that somebody can assess where they are now, consider where they would like to be, and then access the relevant things that will help them to get there.
I've got a quote from one of the articles on your blog, and it goes, "In order to achieve the level of transformation our department is targeting, we need to have the right behaviours and mindset to allow us to truly drive change." How would you describe this mindset and these behaviours?
So firstly, being clear in your definition of what digital is and what digital transformation means at your institution, I think is really important, especially if your digital team is different to your IT team, as I said, we have at Exeter. And I think the idea of the mindset, really leading by example with embracing digital tools and digital skills. One of the most important is for us has been fostering a culture of agile, the mindset and behaviours behind that. So being ambitious, thinking big, but getting started and adding value as quickly as possible. Like I said, asking the students what's important to them and being able to respond to that. But also trying things, learning from that and trying again. So we're operating in an iterative process. The app that we launched, as I mentioned, last September, we've already iterated that multiple times based on feedback. It started out with 5 features. It's already got more than that. We're adding features all the time based on feedback. So I think you're really going back to mindset and behaviour. Just don't put things off until you have everything in place, because technology is just advancing so quickly around us. It will have already advanced again in the time it takes for someone to write a perfect business case. And there's a quote, isn't there, about perfection being the enemy to progress. So I think just getting started has been really important.
That is a really nice message to end on. Just get on and do it. It's interesting to hear a really quite detailed breakdown there of how an institution has grown its digital capacity in a very deliberate way. I mean, even just her team going from sort of 12 to 50 in such a short space of time. I felt she made a very salient point that students' expectations for digital experiences are set long before they actually come to university. So this does mean institutions do need to look at digital practices outside the sector as well as within.
Yes, and Exeter itself provides a really useful case study for other institutions looking to embark on this change management journey.
Absolutely. And that's everything for today. If you would like to find more advice, insight, and best practice examples of how academics and institutions are leveraging digital technology to enhance all aspects of higher education, then do head over to campus. We have loads of resources tackling these topics. That is at www.timeshighereducation.com/campus. Thanks very much. We will see you next time.
You're listening to a Times Higher Education podcast.